I come to you guys with a very somber tone today. I feel like I need to make an apology. Last week, I made the despicable, utter, horrible crime of picking the University of Miami to win the national championship during week 7 of the college football season. And lo and behold, they lost. What up, beasts? Welcome to What Dudes Want to Hear. Man, Louisville upset Miami in Coral Gables last Friday night. This was the 2025 Jeff Brom special, Louisville's head coach. So Louisville went up 14-0 in the first quarter, and Miami just really wasn't able to claw their way back at all throughout the rest of the game. I mean, Louisville only scored 10 more points, but Miami just couldn't find their way out of that hole to get back. And so one of the major reasons why Miami lost this game was turnovers. It felt like a Dutch bakery watching this game. So all of these turnovers were Carson Beck interceptions, and let's look at these interceptions. So first one was a triple coverage, just misread, long ball into traffic. That's an interception. The next one was a receiver ran a straight line in a triple coverage, picked right off. Up next, there was a little bit of confusion on one of the routes between Beck and a wide receiver, and ball just went right into triple coverage. And on the last one, it actually looked like Beck was finally doing what he hadn't really done the whole game, was just find the shortest, closest receiver to him. But honestly, the defensive player just ended up making a better play than the receiver was able to make, and it ended up costing Miami the game. And if we're thinking about this, I'm sure you noticed the pattern that Carson Beck wasn't making great decisions throughout this game. And I think the reason he wasn't making these great decisions was because he was trying to play hero ball. He was trying to put the game all on himself. He's going to be able to figure it out himself. He's going to be able to fix everything for everyone else. When in football, there's 22 to 30 individual unique positions depending on a certain football team, let alone all the subs you have. So it can't just be one guy that's completely making the game his game. You got to be able to spread the ball around, got to be able to put the ball where it needs to be in certain moments to have a fighting chance of winning the game. And really, it looked like they had a fighting chance of winning the football game. Whenever Carson Beck threw that last interception, they were only down by 3 points and they were within field goal range. Really, all Miami was trying to do was just get closer to the field goal so they could kick it to overtime. And honestly, if the game went to overtime, Miami had a lot of momentum. I think they would have been able to get it done, but it just didn't happen. And so with Carson Beck, his performance honestly reminded me a lot of John Mateer in the Red River rivalry. He was forcing the ball into big situations, and he just wasn't finding the open receiver. It just seemed like he couldn't read the field effectively. I don't know if he forgot to put his contacts in for the day, but he just couldn't see 20 yards ahead of him. And, sometimes you just hit the field, and that's what happens. And again, on that last interception, he tried to make the easy throw, but whenever the defenders have been making good plays all game and they just find a good moment to step up, sometimes that's what causes a win and causes a loss in a football game. So looking at this game, Louisville was up 3 in the turnover battle. And when you still only lose by 3 points after throwing 4 interceptions, are there concerns about the quarterback? Absolutely. Do I think these mistakes can be fixed, though? Maybe. Kinda. I think one way that these mistakes can be fixed is if the run game gets going and you don't have to rely on trying to claw your way out of a deficit through the whole game like they were after going down 14-0 in the first quarter. So Louisville was really effective at stopping Miami's rush attack. Miami only had 2.6 yards per carry, so whenever you're running the ball like that, you're not going to be able to do much in general. Also, quarterback for Louisville, Miller Moss, he was able to take care of the football. He didn't really have any errant throws. He didn't have any interceptions. And also, speaking of Miller Moss, Miami was only able to sack him 1 time. And this is a defensive line that people have touted as having future NFL guys. And whenever your future NFL guys aren't able to get to the quarterback on a Friday night in what should be a blowout game, that doesn't say a lot of great things about what was happening in that game. Do I think they'll be able to figure it out? Yeah, they just weren't able to figure out this week. So for Miami, their hardest game left in the season is at Pitt, which is a very winnable game. But Miami, they're going to have to be perfect. Georgia Tech and Virginia could remain undefeated in the ACC. And if Georgia Tech and Virginia remained undefeated in the ACC, man, what would the playoff look like? So how would the playoff treat Miami if they don't make their own conference championship game? And so if you have two teams like Virginia, like Georgia Tech, what are they going to do with those teams if they have almost similar resumes other than Miami's Notre Dame win? That's a good win. But other than that, would the committee put 3 ACC teams in? Would they make the loser of whoever plays in the conference championship game no longer be in the playoff? There's a lot of interesting hypotheticals that are going along with the ACC whenever you hit these chaos scenarios like what just happened with Louisville. And if college football is anything, college football is chaos. Man, Georgia kept it real against Ole Miss. Rough transition, guys. Let's try that again. This weekend, Georgia kept it real against Ole Miss. Georgia won another shootout, and they also made another 2-score comeback in the second half. Georgia, right now, their identity is a second-half team, and it's honestly been their identity for a while now. Gunnar Stockton at quarterback for Georgia is a very strong culture fit. He reminds me heavily of Stetson Bennett, and play style, not necessarily as much, but the way those guys really take seriously that block G that they have on the side of their helmet, those guys are Georgia Bulldog leaders. They're Bulldogs for life, and there's something to be said for that within the kind of program that Kirby Smart's kind of being forced to run nowadays. You don't have all defensive NFL players just waiting in the wings to come in whenever your starter goes down. You don't have backup quarterbacks that were the highest ranked quarterbacks in their classes anymore. That's just not the way college football works. There's a lot more parity in the game. So if you want a solid quarterback, you want a quarterback that is going to actually value the kind of team that you have. And so watching this game, it's easy to see that the Ole Miss offense is deadly when they're in rhythm. However, they were out of rhythm in the fourth quarter. Let's look at the last 3 drive charts for Ole Miss in the fourth quarter. So Ole Miss is up by 2 points. They get a 3-and-out, 19 seconds off the clock. Georgia goes down and scores. So now Ole Miss is down by 5. They get another 3-and-out, 57 seconds off the clock. And Georgia goes back down the field, shoots a field goal. So now Ole Miss is down by 8. 5 plays, 12 yards, 38 seconds. Georgia was able to get Ole Miss out of rhythm, and it's a team that just keeps pushing. Ole Miss goes to Oklahoma this week, and Georgia still plays Florida, at Mississippi State, Texas, and Georgia Tech at a neutral site. And get this, if Georgia and Georgia Tech keep winning, this could be the first time that clean old-fashioned hate, which is the rivalry name for the football game, is a top 10 matchup since 1966. So we could potentially be seeing something that we haven't seen in almost 60 years. And, how are we going to reward this awesome, momentous occasion for both of these teams? Well, we're going to play it at a neutral site, sterile NFL location game. Because what else is college football in 2025 if not finding every excuse to play at a boring neutral site location? Alabama earned their cigars against Tennessee this weekend. So Alabama has been incredible this season at building their drives. This is not last year's Alabama. So last year, often it felt like, 3-and-out. Oh, all of a sudden, Jalen Milroe takes the cannon that is his arm, and Iron Man blasts the football to Ryan Williams 59 yards down the field, and they get a touchdown. It's not that kind of football team right now. A lot of times it's, 6-yard run. Ooh, 7-yard run, first down. Ooh, okay, 12 yards out route. Now they're going for a deep route. Oh, picked up 30 yards. That's all they needed, though. They're now at the 5. And with Alabama, with scoring, generally a lot of times that's where you want to be. You want to be able to steadily keep that offense humming rather than trying to force things, rather than trying to only stretch the field, rather than understanding that, hey, there's 10 yards in front of me. I might as well take these 10 yards since they're guarding down the field so much. These 10 yards are open. Let's go ahead and get them, guys. That's a first down that keeps us alive. And this is a team that just continues to stay alive. So also with this Alabama team, this is a Crimson Tide that has used their quarterback as a blocker. You don't always see that with star quarterbacks, specifically star quarterbacks that could be winning the Heisman at the end of the season. They still have the guys required to make those 15-second Instagram reel highlight videos. You have your Ryan Williams. Ty Simpson has a powerful enough arm and an accurate enough arm to allow him to get to work. But their bread and butter is playing boring, winning football. And if there's one thing that Alabama has thrived on in the past, it is boring, winning football. They have a few splash plays, but they don't live and die like them like they had to when Jalen Milroe was back in the pocket. And with football teams, teams often take on the identity of their quarterback. And with how cerebral Ty Simpson is, this team really understands that every marathon just starts with a step. Not to be cliche, but that's just what Alabama has looked like so far this season. A lot of people are calling out Tennessee's choice to throw the ball whenever they're within the 2-yard line, on the goal line, right about to get a touchdown going into halftime. And instead of running the ball, they throw the ball, and that gets intercepted and taken 99 yards back to the house. A lot of people are critiquing that play call. However, I'm not that mad at it. I think with how good Alabama is right now, the fact that you're in Bryant-Denny Stadium, the fact that this is a team that can do anything, you're going to have to take some risks to beat the University of Alabama, and I don't mind Tennessee taking this risk. Were they out of the game from there on? Pretty much, yeah. But I am never going to falter a team. I'm never going to fault a team that is willing to do the ugly stuff that, yeah, they're going to have to answer for it at the press conference. Josh Heupel answered a couple questions about that play call at the press conference, but I'd rather him have to answer those questions than be sleeping in his king-size bed at night thinking, man, why did I run it and we only got a field goal instead of trying to go for that touchdown? Because they probably would have lost anyways. So I'm at least happy for Josh Heupel that they went ahead and had the guts to call that kind of play. It just didn't work this time. And so even though Tennessee came into the second half, they scored a big rushing touchdown. They kept their foot on the gas, but Bama's foot was on the diesel, unfortunately. Bama had a strong enough lead and patient enough quarterback to really keep Tennessee at bay throughout the rest of the game. I was really impressed with Tennessee's refusal to quit. Was this because it was a rivalry game? I don't know. Was this just because Tennessee wanted to still have the highest scoring offense in the nation? I don't know. But for Alabama, this is the 4th ranked opponent in a row. And whenever you beat 4 ranked opponents in a row, you're already beyond pattern. That's the expectation now. So it's going to be that expectation for Alabama to go into other people's buildings, go into your own building and take care of business. And that's really what I see them doing for the rest of the season. So props to Alabama. Really good win against Tennessee. They really earned their cigars. Happy 3rd Saturday in October to all the residents of Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And up in Fayetteville, there was a shootout this weekend. Texas A&M escaped Arkansas with a win. And even though it was a loss for Arkansas, man, this was a Bobby Petrino legacy game. And in case y'all haven't seen this video, let me give you guys a quick history about Bobby Petrino. Let's roll it.
In 2012, Petrino was in a motorcycle crash that left him looking goofy as hell. He initially said that he was riding alone at the time of the crash, but that wasn't true. He was with a woman who wasn't his wife. It was Jessica Dorrell, a former Arkansas All-SEC volleyball player who Petrino hired to the football staff. A police report revealed that Petrino wasn't alone on that motorcycle and the controversy began. The two were having a relationship, and Petrino often sent her gifts, including $20,000 cash as a Christmas present that was used on a new car. Petrino was then fired.
So yeah, that is the dude that is now putting up 42 against a top 5 team in the nation. And unfortunately, Texas A&M just happened to put up 45 this game. This game felt like a competitive Oklahoma game from the late 2010s where the defense is really just melted like butter and you're waiting for both QBs to keep extending plays, and all of a sudden one QB messes up and boom, that's who wins the game. And honestly, when I was watching the replay, I think this one play really summarizes the game. So we're in the fourth quarter, just a little under 3 minutes left, and it's 4th and 5. Arkansas, at this point, they have to go for it from their own 11-yard line. So, boom, ball is spotted. Center drops it back. Taylon Green drops back in the pocket. He's looking to pass, and that Texas A&M pass rush is coming right up to him. So he has to scramble into the end zone. So now he's running around the end zone. And so he barely escapes the Aggie pass rush. And let me remind you that one of their defensive linemen is currently up for the Heisman. So he escapes that guy, and he starts running downfield. All of a sudden, he gets past the line of scrimmage. There's nobody in front of him in the first down. He gets the first down, and then he keeps running. And then he breaks some ankles, and he runs all the way to the Texas A&M 38-yard line. Honestly, if Arkansas had won this game, they'd probably play this clip for the next 50 years in Fayetteville, Arkansas. But they didn't. And A&M's back on the road this week in Baton Rouge, and we'll see if they can stay undefeated. Man, again, in the SEC, Vanderbilt took care of business against LSU. Diego Pavia has got it. I don't know what it is, but he's got it. He led the team in passing and rushing. And LSU was without their star linebacker, but I'm really not sure how much of a difference it made. They still haven't figured out their offense, and they only have so much time to do it at this point. LSU still plays A&M, at Bama, Arkansas, and at Oklahoma. And they'll probably really only be favored against Arkansas the rest of the season. So it's really now time to talk about Vandy in the SEC race and the playoff race. They have a legitimate chance to do it. And I'm really not worried about them at home, but they still go to Texas and Tennessee. But I am a little bit worried about the team that's coming in to Nashville this weekend, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So let me take a quick sip of water. You know, we don't like dead air on this program. No dead air today, no dead air today. So let's hit the quick game real quick. I'm going to go through about 7 games, 6 or 7 games, if you will. We're just going to do quick facts, quick takeaways. So let's go. Notre Dame locked in versus USC. USC was really unable to make a statement on the road. I thought they'd be able to. They weren't. Notre Dame was able to force 3 turnovers. Running back Jeremiah Love ran for 228. And Notre Dame still heavily in the playoff race. If they went out, I'd be incredibly surprised if they're not in the playoff. All right, in the ACC, Georgia Tech, they won in interesting fashion against Duke. They actually had a 95-yard fumble return, and it was honestly a pretty close game until Georgia Tech really just blew it open up in the fourth. This was a strong road win for Georgia Tech, and it was a kind of a win we really hadn't seen from them where they were able to get it done and take care of business on the road. And Haynes King, again, man, he's putting on that Superman cape. He had 205 in the air and 120 on the ground. That guy, he's a beast. So going into Utah, we had the Holy War, BYU versus Utah, and BYU won said Holy War. This pretty much firmly cements them in the Big 12 hunt at this point and pretty much knocks Utah out of the playoff race and the Big 12 race unless something drastic happens. So BYU also has a Big 12 gauntlet. They play at Iowa State this week, at Texas Tech. They play versus TCU at home, and they also play at Cincinnati. 3 of those teams, or well, actually all 4 of those teams have been ranked at some point in the season. So don't disregard that BYU, they have a tough couple of games coming up. All right, in the G5, UAB, in case you're unfamiliar, the University of Alabama at Birmingham beat Memphis. So Memphis was 6-0 going into this game. They are now 6-1. And so this really throws a spoke into the bicycle wheel of the American Conference race. USF now looks like the clear favorite and front runners for the conference. And pretty much by a similar token, they also look like the front runners to take up that G6 spot in the playoff race this year. But really interesting matchup because Memphis and USF play each other this Saturday. So this could be a play-in game for both of these teams going into the playoffs. So really interesting there. Man, Auburn is falling apart right in front of our eyes. They just can't keep getting out of their own way. And I know the umpires and the refs have been, they've been against Auburn this season, man. If the refs didn't count, man, we'd be 5-2 this season. Well, you're not. You're 3-4. So it looks like a change at both head coach and quarterback might happen soon. And again, they're 3-4 right now, and it'll be difficult to become bowl eligible if they don't make changes. Man, let's go up to Lexington. Kentucky, you blew it. You blew it against Texas, Kentucky. Let me read you some stats. Kentucky had 26 first downs. Texas had 8. Kentucky had 395 total yards. Texas had 179. Kentucky had 137 yards rushing. Texas didn't even crack 50. Kentucky had over 39 minutes on time of possession. And Texas still won in their building. Texas made a really good goal line stop in overtime that pretty much saved the game for them. And their special teams, again, they looked good. And whenever all three phases, like when offense, defense, and special teams play well for Texas, they could be the best team in the nation. But they just haven't figured out a way to combine all three of those. So still waiting if that'll happen. This week, unlike Red River Rivalry, this really looked like Arch Manning, again, was just not where he needs to be for the season, which is interesting because he figured it out against Oklahoma, which is one of the most difficult defenses to face in the nation right now. But Kentucky, man, that just, goes right over his head. So speaking of Oklahoma, though, Oklahoma got back on track. They had a great bounce back against South Carolina. They finally had a 100-yard rusher this season, Torrey Blaylock, the true freshman. And Oklahoma, they really haven't been able to get the run game going. So that's interesting coming from them. OU held South Carolina to 3 first downs. They didn't start getting first downs until the fourth quarter. So that says something pretty good about their defense. The refs missed a holding call, really, on the only South Carolina touchdown, too. So it really could have been 24-0. But it wasn't. Also, South Carolina ran a fake punt in this game, and I'm just going to add this clip real quick. This is probably one of my favorite moments of commentary from all season. Roll it.
And there's the fake, and there's the interception.
Also, South Carolina tried this against Oklahoma last year, and it worked. So I don't fully understand them trying to go for it 2 years in a row, but it is what it is. All right, that's the quick game. That's the long game. That's all the games that happened last week. But let's talk about college football in the sense that not everything's about the game. Sometimes it's about the people in charge of the game. And those people in charge of the game, a lot of them have been fired recently. So there are some openings at some big schools. And I'm going to go through 4 of the biggest openings right now and who I think should replace them. So take a sip of replenishment real quick. And let's get into it. So Penn State opening, James Franklin fired this year. I think Penn State should hire Will Stein. Will Stein is the current Oregon offensive coordinator, and he's played and coached all around the country. He's produced 3 NFL caliber QBs in a row at Oregon, and honestly, I can't put my finger on it, but I just don't see Penn State going with another head coach right now. I think they really need to hit the chalkboard again and just throw something at the wall and see if it sticks. Because if you're trying to find an elite coach in the country, if you're trying to find an elite coach to come and be your new coach, a lot of times the reason you can't find them is because they're actually committed to the school that they're already at, that they haven't been fired from. So I think going with a coordinator could be a huge move for them, and that's what I would suggest for them. So Penn State, I'd go with Will Stein. At Florida, I think you should go with John Gruden. So John Gruden, he'd be a solid culture fit for Florida, has history in Tampa Bay, so he knows the area well. He'd be able to recruit it pretty well, I'd assume. And also this new NIL setup to where the general manager is taking care of a lot of the player money and player NIL deals, all that stuff, that would be set up well for Jon Gruden's success, considering he spends a lot more time actually focusing on the game planning and all of that stuff than having to focus on everybody's contracts and things like that. He'd have a quarterback that he'd be able to come home to. DJ Lagway, current Florida quarterback, he's expressed interest in staying with the Gators, so that's a good sign for Gruden if he is lured into this job. And Lagway is that kind of guy that can lure a guy back into coaching. So this Gruden hire would, I think, give some juice to a program that really began to feel lethargic under Billy Napier. And Florida has the chance to go from a 2010 Honda Civic to a 2015 Lamborghini. And I say 2015 because Jon Gruden's not all that new, but he kind of drives like a Lamborghini. But if you know anything about cars, Lamborghinis don't always have a smooth ride because they're so light. And do I think that Jon Gruden's ride in Florida is going to be, just smooth sailing? Absolutely not. Hence the comparison. So I don't think that ride's going to be smooth, but at the end of the day, you're going to look a lot cooler in a 2015 Lambo than a 2010 Honda Civic. And at this point, Florida really just needs to feel cool again. They haven't felt cool in a while. And there's something to be said for whenever you're recruiting 17 and 18-year-old guys who have been the coolest guy at their school all their life to come and be cool at a cool school. So I'll see how much else I can rhyme this podcast episode, but this next hire isn't going to rhyme. I think Arkansas should hire James Franklin. James Franklin has SEC experience, and he brought Vanderbilt out of the shadows before Penn State. And despite popular belief, despite what you've seen recently, it's not necessarily very easy to bring Vanderbilt out of the gutter. This was a dude that was 2 or 3 plays away from winning the national championship. And if he took this Arkansas job, if Arkansas somehow secured James Franklin, he would have Walmart and Tyson Chicken NIL money, a hotbed of talent, and a fan base that will take any reason to celebrate you winning. Franklin would be a home run hire for the Razorbacks. You can't convince me otherwise. At UCLA, I think they should hire Tommy Rees. If you're not familiar, he is the current offensive coordinator for the Browns. But Tommy Rees, his dad coached there, and his brother played with the Bruins. He's 33 years old, and he's part, honestly, of this potential youth movement at UCLA. I think with a guy like Tommy Rees, you could keep on this Jerry Neuheisel character. You could keep Joffrey Lannister on the sidelines. And while the Browns haven't exactly lit it up on offense this season, they also have 2 rookie quarterbacks and a struggling run game by, you guessed it, another rookie. So those are my hires. Penn State, hire Will Stein, Oregon offensive coordinator. Florida, take Jon Gruden. Arkansas, steal James Franklin. You'll get some stability. And UCLA, go ahead and take Tommy Rees from the pros. But that's enough coach talk. That's enough talk about last week. We're all about cutting promos here at What Dudes Want to Hear. So let's cut a promo on what you're going to be watching on Saturday. So let's go into the dual screen setup. So if you are unfamiliar, the dual screen setup, it's exactly what it sounds like. You're a poor college student, or at least I am, and you only have 2 TVs in your place that you can set up for college football. So you have a bigger one and a smaller one because you didn't buy matching TVs whenever you got them. They just kind of came into your life, and you really don't know how they even got there. But you have a bigger TV and a smaller TV. I'm going to tell you what game needs to be on the bigger TV and what game needs to be on the smaller TV, depending on what kind of time of day you are watching college football. So at 11 a.m., Central Time, that is, you're going to want Ole Miss at Oklahoma. So this is really an interesting game. This is an electric Rebel offense going against a suffocating Sooner defense. And the spread opened at 3.5 for OU, and it's now grown to 4.5. And there's been a lot of noise surrounding Lane Kiffin's future at Ole Miss. Personally, I don't think he's really going anywhere, but players have social media, and that can be a big distraction for the locker room whenever you see that, shoot, I don't know if I'm going to have my head coach here at the end of the year at a place where I've invested my time in building friendships. I've invested my time in getting an education. And so with that distraction on the mind, potentially on the mind of those players, if OU can find a way to run the ball for, maybe get at least 100 yards rushing on the day and force a turnover, I really like the Sooners in this matchup. So give me Oklahoma. Up next, we also have on that smaller screen, you're going to want UCLA at Indiana. So Indiana has a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense in all of college football. And like Coach Sig said in his press conference this week, UCLA is honestly more of a 3-0 team as opposed to a team that lost to New Mexico, as opposed to a team that lost to UNLV. Really, I've yet to see Indiana be anything but locked in this season. And going into a moment like this, I think Coach Sig could find a motivation to yell at a cucumber in the grocery aisle at Kroger. So, man, give me the Hoosiers. I really like Indiana this season. I think they're going to be able to get it done against UCLA. All right, at 2:30, got Missouri at Vanderbilt on the big screen. And so I really like Vanderbilt at home, and Missouri's a good team. And if they can get the run game going, I really like Missouri. So I'm actually going to take Missouri in this game. And Missouri's back is really against the wall after the Bama loss. And Vanderbilt might be feeling a little too confident after beating LSU. I think if Missouri can get that run game going, which they really weren't able to do against Alabama, this is a Missouri team that if they can get out to a lead, if they can control the clock, if they get Ahmad Hardy to get a 20-yard run here, a 15-yard run there, they can set up Bo Pribula to be able to attack Vanderbilt's secondary, and I like that matchup. So give me Missouri. All right, on your smaller screen, we're going to have a Big 12 matchup. We're going to have BYU at Iowa State. So Iowa State's currently favored by 2.5, and I don't love a true freshman quarterback starting against Iowa State in Ames, and this is really Iowa State's last stand to make the playoff. But I've picked against BYU all year, and it hasn't done anything for me. So give me BYU in this game. All right, 6:30 p.m., prime time. We got Texas A&M at LSU. Man, LSU just hasn't been able to figure out their offense. But the Aggie offense looked really good against Arkansas, but the Tiger defense is legit. So LSU, I believe, will be playing with a chip on their shoulder after last week. I mean, they kind of got embarrassed against Vanderbilt, and I know it's not as embarrassing to lose against Vanderbilt these days, but these are guys that take pride in their ability to play football. You don't go to LSU if you are not prideful in your ability to go on the football field and beat anybody you line up against. And this really feels like the ultimate battered Aggie syndrome moment. This is where Texas A&M has lost over and over again, year after year after year. But I've seen very little battered Aggie syndrome since Elko was hired to be the head coach in College Station. So give me the Aggies at Death Valley at night. All right, last game, smaller screen at night. We're going to have Houston at Arizona State. This is another Big 12 battle. And again, this is a 6-1 Houston team, but Arizona State's heating up. They did this last year too. They looked kind of lethargic at the beginning of the season, but once they got hot as Arizona. Arizona, the state of Arizona. I'm not talking about the University of Arizona. They haven't been great this season. I'd be very surprised if the Sun Devils don't get it done in Tempe. But guys, that's all I got for this week. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to the podcast. Leave me feedback below. If you like the thumbnail, let me know. If you like what I talk about, let me know. If you don't like what I talk about, honestly, you probably clicked off a while ago, so it really doesn't even matter. Thank you guys for listening. We will see you next week, and we'll also see you Saturday. Bye, guys.